Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys Football, continuing with our 2022 season previews as we shift our focus to the Stanford Cardinals. Obviously, a very tough season. 3-9 last year. It really seemed to get away from them. They started the season not looking too bad. You could tell this wasn't going to be one of the great Stanford teams, but you really weren't thinking it was going to be a 3-9 team. However, digging into watching some of the last couple games of the season, watching some film from last year, and then looking to who they got coming back, there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about this Stanford team. Before we get into it, I want to say thank you guys for all the support you guys have shown the channel. I believe over 950 subscribers. Very, very appreciative to what you guys have given us and the support you guys have shown us. So if you do like talking ball, I love watching me some Pac-12 football as a kid. I used to love staying up late. I'm on the East Coast, staying up late, watching Christian McCaffrey go to work on Saturday nights. Pac-12 After Dark is some of my best college football memories. So if you guys do like talking college football, you do like talking the Pac-12, consider subscribing to the channel if you guys do like the content. Let's start talking some Stanford football. Obviously, the big thing you want to focus on the offensive side of the ball is Tanner McKee is coming back at quarterback. Projected on a lot of boards to be a first-round pick. He certainly has all the athletic attributes. I mean, really, really tall, good frame, rocket arm. He's very accurate. You just want to see him take that step and really put the numbers on the field and put the play on the field that he really didn't last year. But this dude has all the tools, and we talked about it. They are third in the country in returning production. In this discussion around returning production, sometimes it can be a little misleading. I think about the Iowa State team last year, a ton of returning production. A lot of these guys were redshirt seniors, six-year guys who kind of were capped. Like, how much better are you going to get from your fifth year to your sixth year? You're kind of athletically capped. You're not sure how much you're going to improve. This Stanford team has a lot of guys who were underclassmen contributing on the football field last year. And now they get all these guys coming back, and you expect them to take steps because they're only 18, 19, 20-year-old kids coming back. You expect them to be a little bit improvement of play. On the offense side of the ball, they're second in the country in returning production. We talked about Tanner McKee. He's going to be the key to the Stanford team. Obviously, we talked about all the attributes he has. I mean, this dude, very, very tall guy, can make any throw on the football field. He's very accurate with the football. He's on time with the football. I think the biggest key around this Stanford offense and how they're going to look next year is the role players. Who does Tanner McKee have around him to kind of light up the scoreboard? We're going to start with the wide receiver position. It's a position that's very interesting to me. They're pretty much exclusively big, tall targets. I mean, start with their tight end, Ben Yurosek, a guy who I think is one of the best tight ends in the country. Could be a top 5 tight end taken in the next year's NFL draft. He kind of has it all. He was their lead guy last year. And then you look to a guy like Elijah Higgins, who had 500 passing yards. He's also 6'3". You got John Humphreys, who's 6'5". He's returning. You got a guy like Bryson Tremaine, who's returning after a 250-yard season. He's 6'4", I have in my notes. So it's like the Redwood Forest. I mean, it's just a lot of really big targets. And that was kind of what I saw watching their film last year. It's kind of what they relied on. Just throw it up to the big guys and hopefully they can make a play. But I kind of look to the Stanford offense, and you get a guy like Michael Wilson back, who I think can really provide this spark. He was banged up last year. Can you work the middle of the field? A lot of their passes were kind of like jump ball, fade route, boundary routes. Can you use all the blades of grass in the field? Can you use the middle of the field and get some of your playmakers in space? I think that's going to be the big key for the Stanford passing attack. They're a bunch of talented guys, but they all kind of serve the same purpose. Sometimes in the wide receiver room, you want to have a couple. Think of it like a basketball team. You have your center and your power forward, the big guys, but you have some of the smaller guys who can create separation and create after the catch. That's kind of the question mark I have about this Stanford team. A guy you can look for some absolute electricity is at that running back room. You obviously lose Austin Jones, Nathaniel Pete, two guys who were solid running backs, but nothing special. And Austin Jones averaged 3.5 yards per carry. You have Nathaniel Pete averaging five yards per carry. This was not special. Now you look to E.J. Smith, the son of the legendary running back Emmitt Smith, to kind of go to work. And I think he kind of brings a more all-purpose running back style. I mean, you saw him come out of the slot and catch a touchdown pass in the spring game. He's very good in pass protection, and he's a developing runner. I mean, he's coming into his third year of college football. He's put on that weight. He looks like a grown man now, and you expect him to be an all Pac-12 performer at the running back position. This was what really was hurting them last year. They just could not run the football efficiently. I mean, I think as a team, they averaged just around 4 yards per carry, which really is not getting it done. You want to see some more explosive runs. You want to be able to get your running backs out in space and being able to kind of hit that explosive play. I think EJ Smith has a little better chance of providing that for the Stanford Cardinals. Then you look to their offensive line, which was a talented group, but it was not a very good. I wouldn't say bad, but it was not very good. It definitely was one of their weaker units on the offense side of the ball, and this is going to be the X factor of this team. I mean, Tanner McKee is not a very mobile guy. As good of a quarterback he is, he's a pocket passer. You got to be able to create clean pockets for him to step up and use that good arm. He's not a guy that can he's not a guy who thrives getting out of the pocket and making plays. He can do it. It's not where he thrives. And so as an offensive line, and this is what we talk about with the returning production. I mean, they're returning all 5 of their offensive linemen, and they're all very kind of young guys, and you're looking for them to keep getting better. They're not like a 5th-year senior coming back for their 6th year where it's like he'll probably just stay the same and be solid. Like all these guys, and I look to a guy like Miles Hinton, the brother of Chris Hinton, who's one of my favorite players at Michigan, top 100 recruit in his class according to 24/7 Sports. He's going to be playing that left tackle spot. Or right, I think they're going to put him at right tackle. He looked good. I mean, he's a guy that you expect coming into his 3rd year to really improve. Another guy, Brandon Brass, at that center position. He's another guy who I believe was a top 100 recruit, top 150 recruit. These guys have pedigree, and they're just still developing. And so this offensive line, as bad as it was this last year, you can really be optimistic about how that offensive line will improve this year, and that can work twofold. It's one, obviously protecting Tanner McKee, letting that passing attack really get active, but also giving some space for a guy like EJ Smith to get the run game going, which they really, really struggled with. I know Stanford likes to work off the play action on. So if you can establish the run game, optimistic about how that can help the passing game and kind of get some of those bigger receivers turned loose a little bit. I'm going to take a look at the defensive side of the ball now. And the first thing I like to do, they're 15th in the country in returning production from the defense. However, that defensive line is getting decimated. And if you guys know me and how I like to evaluate college defenses, it starts at the defensive line. How well can you create havoc for the opposing quarterbacks? How well can you create negative plays, tackles for a loss, and sacks? I mean, that is, and turn the ball over. That's how you have a good defense. You look at Georgia last year, it's like a perfect example of a defense that, yeah, they had some good linebackers too, Nakobe Dean, Channing Tindall. Those guys are studs. But coming into the season, there were some serious question marks about the secondary on that Georgia defense. It didn't really matter because no quarterback could sit in a pocket and deliver a ball because that front 4 was absolutely getting after it and creating those havoc plays, creating sacks, tackles for loss, negative plays, and getting off the field. And so Stanford, they really struggled. I'm in 123rd in sacks in the country. That is, it really can't get much worse if you're the Stanford Cardinals. I think there's 130 teams in the FBS. You're 123rd. Really, really weak pass rush last year, and they're losing a lot of guys. So this is the big question mark, is how can we turn these guys loose? And from what I've been reading, David Bailey, the number 1 recruit in the 2022 class, comes in as an early enrollee in the spring. Apparently, he's been getting active. So maybe look for a guy like a true freshman, David Bailey, to get something going. But that's the biggest thing. They're switching to that 4-3 defense. I think they're going to use their outside linebackers as more of those defensive ends and maybe get some more athleticism, some more speed on the edge to really affect those pockets for the opposing offenses. That's the biggest thing, though. Like, these teams were just sitting in pockets and kind of dicing Stanford up. For as good as their secondary was, you can't cover for 6-7 seconds. You got to be able to get the quarterback off a spot, and Stanford just simply wasn't able to do that last year. So the big question mark, who's going to be a difference maker in the pass rush? Looking at the linebacker position, they're returning 2 of their leading tacklers at the linebacker position, in Levani Damuni and Ricky I don't want to mess up his name. I probably messed up the first guy's name too. I am not great with names. Ricky Miazin, 2 guys who played really, really good football for Stanford last year. It's going to be a solid group, but what I want to focus on for their real strength is that safety, that secondary position as a whole. I mean, Caillou Blue Kelly, he's going to be a guy that's playing in the NFL on Sundays. Really, really good cornerback. 11 pass breakups last year. Extremely excited for. I think he could be a first-team All Pac-12 kind of guy. Then you look at a guy like Kendall Williamson, who was good last year, their second leading tackler, got his hands on a lot of footballs. Jonathan McGill, a guy that I didn't really see watching the film because he only played 2 games. In those 2 games, 2 interceptions, was an absolute difference maker. You also bring in Patrick Fields, one of the few transfers that Stanford gets. Obviously, it's very hard to get into their graduate program, and with most guys transferring as graduates, you just can't pick up those graduate guys that other teams can. And that's why their high school recruiting classes are so good, because they just pound and they have so many scholarships to throw at. But that's going to hamstring Stanford a little bit. Like, as that defensive line spot, you would love to go get a guy who's transferring, who has some pass rush, who's proven that he's a good pass rusher. You can't really do that, but they do get Patrick Fields from Oklahoma. He was a captain out of Oklahoma. He's a very, very good, solid football player. He's a guy that might not be an NFL guy, and that's probably why he's a grad transfer, but he's a very, very good, smart football player. He's a leader in the locker room. I'd expect him to not only add depth, but definitely add some good play on that Stanford team. And so that's really where the strength is the secondary. The big question mark is who on this defensive line right here is stepping up and kind of making an impact in the pass rush. What I want to do now is just take a look at how their schedule shakes out. So you guys are going to get a look at my mug real quick. We're gonna stop sharing, and then we're gonna take a look and pull up that schedule. Colgate's a good opening week. When I was looking at this, it's good to get some of your guys who are still developing a good kind of practice game. Colgate's not really going to push you. You're going to be able to run your offense and run it successfully. The second game, and this is the ideal spot to play USC. USC has so many new faces coming in and so many old faces leaving. A lot of roster turnover, but it's a talented team. You want to get USC early. Maybe that chemistry hasn't been built up. You get them at home. This is an early upset alert. Now, am I picking Stanford to beat USC with all that talent they got? Probably not, but it's a very winnable game because you're playing them so early on in the season. Hopefully a bunch of the fans show out and it's kind of a rowdy environment, because Stanford certainly has a chance at winning that game. And then you come up and play Washington on the road. It's a hard place to play, but Washington is not a very good team, quite frankly, I don't think. And so I think Washington is a very, very winnable game. And if you can get to 2-1 heading into Oregon, I like your chances. You might not knock off Oregon, but you go to 2-2, and then you can really start cooking in the Pac-12. You get your real strong Pac-12 teams out of the way. Oregon State, probably a very winnable game. Notre Dame is going to be a tough one. Arizona State's very winnable. UCLA will be a tough one, but I think they can win it. Washington State's winnable. Utah's tough. And California and BYU to finish out with it. California should definitely be a win. BYU will be a tough one. And the fun part about BYU is it'll be a home game against probably a ranked opponent in BYU. And it's probably going to be for a bowl game spot. Like you might be sitting around 5-6. You might have 6 wins by then, but you might have 5 wins. That's going to be a really fun game to kind of see if they have the juice to make a bowl game. Now, looking at Stanford, they've recruited really well in the 2019, 2018, and 2020 classes. So some of those guys are now kind of the veterans of the team, talented guys. My outlook for Stanford is let's go make a bowl game. We got to rebound. David Shaw's a great coach, one of the highest paid coaches, but he's a great coach. I mean, you look at the history of what they've done with David Shaw, very, very successful Pac-12 team. If they put another non-bowl losing season together and don't get a bowl game, that seed that he's sitting on is going to get a little hot, because that's going to be 2 losing seasons. That'd be 3 losing seasons in the last 4. And then if you don't count the COVID year, it's 3 straight losing seasons for the Stanford Cardinals. As good as David Shaw has been for Stanford, you might start thinking, is it time to maybe part ways? Because 3 losing seasons in the Pac-12, where the Pac-12 hasn't been that strong lately, that starts to have some questions. So the Stanford team outlook, you got to win a bowl game. But I think there's a really reasonable chance that they get more than 4.5 wins, is what DraftKings has them at. And a lot of optimism. These guys are young. They're really talented, and I think they're going to come in and hopefully play some really good football this year and kind of rebound from a really tough year. So that'll do it for a Stanford Cardinals season preview. Again, if you guys like the content, you like talking college football, we'd really appreciate it if you guys subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get up to 1,000 subscribers before the college football season. So if you guys do like the content, I encourage you guys to go subscribe to the channel. We appreciate all the support you guys are showing us, and we'll talk to you.